Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans. Welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I am Bice, and I'm joined with our MotoAmerica Communications Manager, Paul Carruthers, who's in Southern California. And Paul took a road trip earlier this week. Before we start talking about today's guest, let's check in with Paul and find out how that went. Paul, it's a little bit of a distance up there from where you are up to Buttonwillow, California, right?
Yeah, it's a 3.5 hour drive. Mm-hmm. So I took two of our video guys, Doug and Tucker, up there, and we were up there for 2 days. It's funny, I knew Bakersfield wasn't a real nice area, but then this morning for some reason it was trending on Twitter. So I clicked on it and found out it's like one of the 10 deadliest cities in the country, which, I mean, it didn't really surprise me, but I didn't think it would be ranked that well, or poor, however you want to look at it. But so we stayed in good old Bakersfield for a night and went to the test for 2 days. It's it's always nice to see everybody again, because you don't see those guys all the time. There weren't a lot of them there. It was like the attack guys and Westby with Scults was there, and Kayla Yakov was there with MP13, and Josh Hayes was there helping some Supersport kid that I've never really met. Oh, I don't know if you know of him, Sean. Declan Rosmo.
Oh, yeah, Declan. Yeah. Josh told me about him. I haven't met him, but yeah, I guess he's new. Isn't he from Australia or something?
I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't talk to him. Okay. He was in the MP13 area with Kayla, and it was funny because I walked over there one time and Kayla was really helping him out with some things, which kind of surprised me because apparently he's riding Supersport. But it was fun because I was just eavesdropping, and I was surprised how much she really. Not everybody who's fast knows why they are or knows what they're doing, but I was surprised by her intelligence of how she knew what she was doing and could explain it to somebody else. So that was kind of cool. But the test went well. Gagne was fastest, but not by much over Cam Peterson. Cam Peterson on the first day stuck to the R6 that he's going to race at Daytona. Mm-hmm. And Gagne isn't going to race in the 200, so he was able to just ride the superbike for both days. But no, it was good. And then everybody probably saw we had a little bit of a fire there that was scary at the time. I happened to be interviewing Matthew Scults right in front of the Westby bike, and I basically asked one question, and boof, I looked behind. It was one of those things where it was happening, and you just like, is this really happening? It was like the bike just burst into flames, and we of course ran, and then they were able to put it out with a fire extinguisher. But it was kind of it was good in one way, in that everybody was safe. But you obviously feel for the team, because there's obviously an expense there with replacing parts, and those guys probably were up pretty late that night working on the bike and getting it all ready again. So it was a bit of a bummer, but again, like I said before, it was fortunate that everybody came out of that thing without any injuries, and the fire could have been really bad if for some reason it just started to spread or whatever. But there was quick response, and they got the thing out, and everybody carried on. So it added a little spice to it, But no, it was a good test. We're gonna go back. I think they're there in a couple of weeks again, and I keep hearing that Bobier is going to be there, and I think even Tony and the other M4 guys will be there. So it'll be a bit crowded, and more stories and more content we can generate. So overall, it was real cool.
Yeah, I'd heard that, like, since there's going to be, like you said, the next one's coming up pretty quickly. So this one was a little bit of a shakedown for that next one, so to speak. And I, like you said, I think the Westby, they have to. They obviously aren't going to take the bikes back to Oklahoma or to Georgia. So they did as much as they could before they had to leave the track. And as far as cleaning up that issue with the one bike, and they're going to have to work on it a little bit when they get there for the next test. But one of the things I noticed, and I realized pretty quickly why, but you mentioned that Gagne was quickest, but he was slower than that last test they had, which he was really fast in. And of course they were using testing Dunlop Q tires in that. So that explained that. And I don't think any of those guys were necessarily going for any fastest lap times. I don't think they even used any Q tires at all. So that kind of explained that, if anybody ever looked at the previous test versus that one and wondered why they weren't as fast. Well, that was the reason. So
yeah, and it's one of those places, like I was talking to Gagne about it, and the track changes there so much, with the temperature, whether it's clean or dirty. So I think they really just look at the lap times relative to the lap times that are set on the same day, if that makes sense, more so than how fast he might have gone in July of one year or something, So it's you just kind of take the lap times there with a grain of salt, because really they're just getting ready for the season. And a lot with this, I mean, it was like Scalt said he hadn't ridden a real motorcycle since September. So for guys like that, when they come out to a test like that, I mean, a lot of it's just getting their brain up to speed, so they can get to work. But they did Westby did have some new bits that gets them closer or the same as the attack bike. So they were working on that stuff. But I know initially it was just Matthew trying to get used to riding a motorcycle again.
Yeah, he hadn't ridden that bike. Well, I guess that's not a surprise, but they didn't test the last test. He hadn't ridden that bike since Barber last year. So,
right.
Anyway, so let's move on. So this week we've got Ben Gloddy on, who is a REV'IT Twins Cup rider, moving into his second season aboard the two banger bikes, racing for Robem Engineering on an Aprilia RS 660. And, Ben is another one of these fast, I'm not going to say kids, but fast riders from up in the Northeast. He was teamed up with Teague Hobbs last year, who we had on the podcast recently as well. And Teague has moved on to the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki team on a super sport bike. And so Ben is coming back for another year with Robem Engineering, and he will have another teammate that is yet to be announced, but he will be joined by another teammate, and they're going to begin their season at Daytona when we're down there. Twins Cup is going to be part of that. So let's see. So Ben finished. Sorry, I had this in front of me. I think it was seventh in the championship this past year, and it's funny because Teague was actually just in front of him. So they actually, it was an uncharacteristic year for the team and those two riders. 7th and 8th. Sorry, Teague was 7th and Ben was 8th, and they had Ben had a couple of podiums, 3 in fact. And it's funny, at the last 2 rounds of the season, New Jersey and at Barber, Teague and Ben kind of traded positions. So Teague was, I guess, 3rd. And Ben was 2nd at New Jersey, and then it was flipped around, and Teague was 2nd, and Ben was 3rd at New Jersey, or at Barber Motorsports Park to finish out the year. So they finished out the year strong. We'll talk to Ben about this past year as well as the upcoming season, but let's bring him on, Ben. Hey, sorry, I had your rankings wrong to start with, but good.
No, that's right. All right.
Okay, good. So you would say, I mean, you came into our series and really have been very successful right off the bat. I remember, I think your first race was oddly enough at Utah Motorsports campus a few years ago, right?
Yeah, it was 2019, I believe.
Yeah. Boy, it seems like it hasn't been that long, but
yeah, I know.
But you've had a lot of success. You were in Junior Cup and did real well in that class. And this year, would you say it was a little bit of an off year for you?
Yeah, I definitely think last year was, it definitely wasn't the best year. And it was kind of an off year for both myself and the team a little bit. The team was working really hard with everything, and we kept struggling with parts and, having stuff just fail on us that was out of our control. Like the team was going through the bikes after every session, and everything was brand new, and we'd go out and the bike it'd break again. So I can't thank the team enough for everything they did and everything. And I did my best with everything, and then towards the end of the season we kind of worked it out a little bit, and we're consistently where me and Teague and the team thought we deserved to be.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at the results this morning, Sean, and it's like the last 4 races, or actually the last, probably like 4 of the last 6 races, Ben really came on. I mean, he got 4th, a 6th, a 2nd, and a 3rd. So it's suddenly at the end of the year there, he was kind of where we thought he'd be the entire time. But like he's mentioned, there was obviously some issues throughout the season, and they had a bit of bad luck. So it was good to finish on a strong note, because so Ben, all you got to really do is think of the last races and not the early ones as you start the new season.
Yeah, exactly. We started the season pretty hot. I mean, we came out at Daytona and I was on pole, and then I got taken out there on the last lap. But from there, it just kind of started a downhill spiral.
Now, you mentioned Daytona, so that's obviously where we go first.
Yep.
Is that a place you enjoyed racing at?
Yeah, I like racing there. The first time I ever rode there was with MotoAmerica, when the twins and everything went there this past season. And, I enjoyed it. It's a fun track. It's, high speeds and a lot of drafting, but, makes for good racing, good tight racing.
Ben, listen, I'm not going to mince words here. You got taken out by friendly fire. Let's face it. Tommaso Marcano was your teammate, and we love him. We love when he's in the series. I mean, he's a very energetic young rider, and he's a good rider as well. But of course, we've run that clip a few times, and I'm sure you've seen it. That was the weirdest thing ever, when he basically got caught to the back end of you. And I mean, you couldn't do anything. You had to go down, didn't you? I mean, basically the bike went down, but you had another bike attached to you. So that was weird.
I tried to ride out of it, and I got it as far as I could till I hit the grass. And then once I hit the grass, the rear wheel just fully locked up, and there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, it's crazy. So how are you feeling about the season this year? Because it was a little interesting to start with when, we were figuring out the schedule and everything. And I say we, I mean MotoAmerica. I mean, not Paul. Yeah. I didn't have anything to do with it. But, it was kind of weird. And the effort was to try to get 2 rounds, 2 races at every place you go, rather than going way out to the West Coast, and race 1 race, which is better for the teams. And do you like the fact that you're not at every round, but you're racing 2 rounds at every round you're at?
Yes and no. I've been used to the Junior Cup. Every track we go to, we have 2 races and everything else. So it was this past season, it kind of like sucked. I'd go all the way out to Washington or California, like Laguna. I think we only had 1 race, and it was like, I went all the way out there, and I flew in Thursday morning, and I'm leaving Saturday after our race. And it just, I don't know, it kind of felt weird.
Yeah, that was a strange thing. But I mean, at least this year, it'll be 2 races like it used to be. And you're right, it's got to be tough coming from Junior Cup to go into a class that's, a step up, but yet you don't race it every round because of certain issues of scheduling and all that kind of stuff. So, so it'll be interesting to see. But being that you're East Coast and Northeast, and what Daytona means to all the riders around this country, but certainly riders on the East Coast, and particularly in the Northeast, that seems like it's such a rite of spring to go down to Daytona. And you were there last year, and it's obviously the start of the season. How do you like riding at that track?
Daytona's fun. I mean, it definitely has its, downfalls, because I'm a taller rider, so it's harder for me to tuck in and everything. But it's always fun to go race there. It's always good racing, and it keeps the pack nice and close. So I think this year it's probably going to be another thing like last year, where 6 to 8 of us are all going to the line, just praying you get the right draft.
Yeah, it seems like a timing thing, and hopefully nobody rides the wall like last year.
Yeah,
that was pretty bizarre. But you mentioned you're growing all the time. I don't think you've stopped growing yet, and you've gotten tall pretty quickly. Do you well, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. You got a Twins Cup championship to go for this year, but I imagine you've started to look at and get on bigger bikes. I'm sure that's something in your future. Is that sort of the plan?
Yeah, I've been riding 600s and so whatnot for probably 2 years now. Not really consistently, but just um, riding other people's bikes and just kind of testing them out and whatnot. And definitely on the bigger bikes, my size a little bit helps me just to flick the bike side to side and get through like the S's and stuff. But my trap speeds are definitely down just a smidge compared to people that are a little smaller.
Ben, before we went on, we were talking a little bit about what you've been doing over the winter. Why don't you tell everybody else what you were telling me? And I think it's you mentioned ice riding and also some supermoto.
Yeah, I've been spending quite a bit of time in Florida riding supermoto, and just keep putting laps in and whatnot. And I tested for a couple days at Homestead a few weeks ago, and then after I got home from that trip, everything was frozen at home. So I threw the ice tires on and went and rode some ice a couple weekends ago, and it was fun to just get back and kind of ride with no pressure at all or anything.
You mentioned testing. Is that basically, do you just keep the bikes that you had from last year? It's not, you don't get all new bikes every year, right?
So this year we do have new bikes, but with the new bikes weren't done yet. We're still waiting on a few parts to come in. So I actually rode Teague's bike from last year because mine's all torn apart.
And back to the supermoto thing, do you end up hooking up with other guys over there? I mean, I see Brandon Posh and some of those guys out there, but are we talking about the same places, or are they in different spots than you?
No, all the same places. We were all at Bushnell Motorsports Park. And me and Gus went and stayed at Brandon's house a few weeks ago and whatnot. And, we had the RV with Kevin. So we kind of made a whole trip out of that and, hit Homestead when we were ready to head home.
Now, where are you right now, Ben? I assume you're home in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I am. Yep, I'm home.
Okay, so I need to find something out. I've been following a little bit, well, not a little bit, a lot with what you've been doing in the off season and how you do fundraisers for your season and all the cool things you guys do. And I got to find out. I'm a carnivore from way back, so I'm intrigued by this. But what is meat bingo?
So basically it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. You get three cards, just regular playing cards. And you get little chips and whatnot. And, one of our friends actually was the one that introduced us to this, and people seem to really love it. It's like, you put a 10-pound brisket or something up for the next one. And, you have the people up front calling the cards and whatnot, and you get the 3 cards first, then you win.
So you win meat instead of money.
Yeah.
It's so funny because he makes it sound like it's normal, and it seems anything but to me. Like,
it's definitely different. But I don't know. People seem to love it. So.
Okay.
Is this something people do in New Hampshire, or did you guys invent it?
No, I mean, I had never heard of it before my mom told me about it, and I guess she heard about it from a friend, so it must be something people do.
That's pretty good. In past podcasts we've had with you, and when we know how winter is in New Hampshire, and people, we're not talking about the weather here necessarily. I just want to ask Ben, because he does snowboard. Ben, have you done any snowboarding lately?
I have not.
Oh,
it's been like crazy warm this winter. We've basically been 40 degrees the whole time, so we don't really have a lot of snow right now or anything. And we had actually the day of my fundraiser, it was negative like 35, 40 with the wind chill. And that sucked. Like nobody wanted to do anything.
You're at the point now in your age. It kind of baffles me a little bit because I didn't realize this, but I think at this point, when you hook up with the other guys, when you go to Bushnell in Florida, that's in Florida, right?
Yes. Yep.
When you go there, are you driving yourself these days down there?
Yeah. Most of the time. This last trip I went with Gus Rodeo and his
Oh,
dad.
you said that. Sorry. Yeah.
But all last winter, I think I drove back and forth from like Florida and Georgia back to New Hampshire. I think I did that drive 8 or 9 times over the winter. Yeah.
Wow. And of course, Gus is down in New Jersey, so you drove down from New Hampshire to New Jersey and then went down with him to Florida. Was that how it went?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Wow. So,
well, actually, I went from New Hampshire to New Jersey, picked Gus up, and then went to Ohio to stop in at the Robem Engineering shop and everything. Stopped in, picked up a bike, and then drove back to Gus's house, and then drove to Florida.
Yeah, you head over to Hamilton, Ohio. That's like you're taking a triangle there. You're going over that way and then down back the other way a little bit. That's insane.
Yeah.
There. It's let's talk about Matt Spicer for a minute. I want to ask you, he's a character. I mean, he's one of those guys you have to look at him when you're talking to him because you really have to pay attention to what he's saying, his facial expressions, and the whole bit. I mean, he's an enigma. I mean, I think he's funny as can be, but sometimes you're like, oh, he's actually joking this time. He's not being serious. Is that hard? Yeah. Can you read him pretty well?
I can now. At the beginning of the season, I could not read him to save my life. Like I was like, man, why is this guy being so mean right now? I don't. But now that I know him and have known him for a while, he's super funny. Like 90% of the time, nothing he says is serious. It's all joking and just having fun.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, this guy is absolutely a brainiac engineer. I mean, he definitely has that side of his brain going to the point where that's why he has the driest sense of humor I've ever seen in my life. Like I said, you got to look at him when he's talking, because otherwise you're not going to catch the twinkle in his eye. And that's even not there very often. So
exactly.
So the program this year, like I said, without naming names, you're going to have another teammate. When you had Teague on the team last year, despite the issues you guys had, I mean, you're obviously from the same part of the country, so you knew each other from that point of view. But teammates, and without revealing it, the teammate that you're going to have, is it a good thing to have a teammate to work with the way you do?
Definitely 100%. Me and Teague, we work really good together. We've been racing with each other since, I think I was 10, 11 maybe, and he was, a couple years older than me, so 13. And working with him was great. We were able to work together on and off the track. We came off the track, worked on track maps, and if one of us needed help on track, we'd go out together and give each other that help. And I think this coming season is going to be, the same thing with my new teammate. He's a great rider. He's definitely proved himself. And, now we just got to get on with the season and, see how we're both going to end up doing and just work off of each other to get better and better.
So, Ben, we can ask you about something specific. You're a good information source for a lot of stuff, not only how to read Matt Spicer, but the fact that you're working with American Super Camp still and continuing to be an instructor with that. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Okay.
So I had heard, actually, Paul and I haven't even talked about this yet, but I'm sure Paul knows this too. So we had heard that, and I think he's probably still part of American Super Camp, but Danny's right-hand man, Robbie Peterson, is going to be working with Estenson Racing this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, that's true. I don't know too much about that, honestly. I knew Robbie, Estenson reached out to him, and I knew he was considering it. And then I saw saw the road racing world article come out that said he was going to
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, Road Racing World.
I
Sorry.
think he moved.
yeah,
I think he moved already too. And they're in Arizona, right?
I think they're in Kentucky.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not too sure.
Okay.
But yeah, from what I know, they're like right with JD Beach in Kentucky.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you're saying what Paul's saying is, oh, you're saying, Paul, that Estenson is in Arizona. Yeah, I don't know. I think part of them, I think the owner of it is, but I don't know. A lot of the team, I don't think is now or something. It's weird. Yeah, but there is some Kentucky thing. But does that mean, did Robbie move to Kentucky as well?
I know he's moved. I just don't know where.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think he did move, but I don't know 100% where. I think the team is based out of Kentucky. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you about this. When was the last American Super Camp that you did?
It's actually been a while. Just I've been so busy. I think I did like a month-long trip in November. I went to Delaware, then Washington State, LA, and Santa Rosa.
Wow, you were way out there.
Yeah.
Okay. How does
Way
it
out
work?
here.
Yeah, way out where Paul is. Yeah. How does it work with that camp with regard to, obviously, Danny, is it like, I'll take you when you can do it, or do you have to commit to something? I mean, how does the relationship work?
He'll send out like a big group text, and he'll be like, "Hey, who's available for my camps? This date, and this date." And we'll reply with we're available or not available. So it's just kind of off of our availability and who can go to what camps.
So back to Robbie for a minute, since you've worked with him before, and Paul has known him forever, and I was a huge fan of his when I was younger, and got to know him, became a friend of his. So we all think a lot of him, and it's just what he did when he worked with Wyatt Ferris, and then even with what he did working with Tyler Scott last year. He was a great rider. I mean, he rode in Formula USA on a YZR 500 two-stroke bike that was 1 year old from Wayne Rainey having ridden it, and so he's been in the deep end. And obviously his son is now on his way, a huge star in our series. When working with Robbie and knowing what he's done on some teams from a crew chief point of view, what is he like? Is he pretty analytical as a teacher? What do you see in him and does it surprise you the success he's had as a crew chief on these teams?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. He breaks everything down really well, and just gets the information out like as simple as he can, where you're gonna understand it and be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And I know he's not huge on electronics or anything because he never grew up racing with them. He doesn't, not that he doesn't understand them, but it's definitely when I was riding the 400 and everything and whatnot, and even the twin, when we didn't have data and testing, like I just, it's a little easier for me just to do everything with the bike, and having the data is great and everything, gives you a ton of feedback, but sometimes I'd rather not look at the data once in a while because we're not running traction control, wheelie control, all that. So I don't know. I think he is very great at what he does, and just, I don't know. He's special for sure. He's really good at what he does.
So when you're at those camps and you're teaching, you're obviously instructing riders who are, all kinds of skill levels, I guess, even from, pretty early age, but even, less skill level, I guess you could put it. But for you, you probably also, to get that seat time on those bikes in that camp, it's got to be a good thing for you in two ways, to not only kind of extend or teach, pay it forward and teach what but also to keep honing your skills. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Teaching people is just, it keeps you reminded of everything that you need to keep doing. and, like getting yourself thinking about it and be like, do I really do that? Like, cause you get to a certain point and you just start doing stuff without even realizing you're doing it. So I grew up racing flat track, everything else. So a lot of my habits and everything, like I don't even realize I do them sometimes. So definitely teaching them keeps you reminded of, like, even the little basics and everything like that. And then, like, sometimes we'll do like instructor races, which always end bad, but they're a lot of fun. So you get to go out and push as hard as you can on a little TTR 125 and have a great time and realize, like, just everything going on and like the little things that affect the bike that you can do to change and not have it affect the bike.
All right, this question's a little off the wall, but when you see, you're a young kid, you've been here, you've been with MotoAmerica since your beginnings, and you've worked your way up through Junior Cup and now to Twins Cup. And I don't know what ultimately your goals are as far as whether that would be Super Sport or Stock 1000 or Superbike or whatever, but is it I would find it difficult now to be a young racer if your goals were to be like, oh, everybody says it like, oh man, I just want to be a MotoGP world champion or a Moto2 world champion. And then you see, I mean, I think with Cameron Beaubier going over there and having the success that he did, but probably not the success we would have all wanted or he would have wanted. Does it change that in your mind? Do you think like, oh my God, that's got to be so hard if he can't come back as world champion? Does it change your goals? Do you think like, you know what, maybe my goal should be to be MotoAmerica Superbike champion or World Superbike champion? Does it have any effect on that, or do you not think that far ahead?
So, I mean, I've never really thought that far ahead, but when I was, a lot younger, my goal was always, I want to be MotoGP world champion. But as I've gotten older, my goal has always been to get into World Superbike and just, be a top guy in World Superbike.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Sean, I don't have too much more for Ben, but I bet you do.
Yeah, I just want to, a couple of things I want to check with him on. Two things, and then I think we'll wrap it up here, Ben, unless there's something you want to mention. Actually, you want to mention about you have merchandise, right? You have shirts, hats, things like that you want people to get involved in. Is that right? You want to give a plug there?
Yeah. If you go to my website, bengloddy.racing.com, we have the full online store up there. We have sweatshirts, beanies, hats, t-shirts, all that good stuff.
So I want to ask you, we generally within MotoAmerica, we see the entry lists a little bit earlier than they're made public. So we have to go through them and make sure everything's spelled right and all that. But we haven't seen really a list of the Twins Cup riders yet. And we kind of know who some of them are going to be. I'm sure you do too. There may be some surprises, but looking at yourself and with your teammate, who will still be unnamed, who are you looking at as your greatest challenges in the class this year?
I know Kayla's going to be fast. My teammate is he's going to be fast. And, there's always guys that you never really know about or anything. And you get to the first round and they're always right up front. So, I think Hayden Schultz will definitely he'll be a top guy at, all the rounds for sure. And yeah, I think, just trying to stay focused on myself more than, what a bunch of other people are doing and everything, so that I can be as ready as I can be and just do what I need to do on the track.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing you guys. I mean, Twins Cup is an awesome class. It keeps getting better all the time. It's crazy the amount of development that's done in that class year after year, and it's become a legitimate step along the way for sure for a lot of riders, and we're certainly glad you're in it again and back for another season. Looking forward to that a lot. I want to do a shout out. Paul makes fun of me about this, and Ben, you probably think I'm weird about this anyway, but I always like to give shout outs to the moms and the girlfriends. So I got to give a shout out to Christina Day, Ben's mom, who I stay in touch with. She's great about promoting you, Ben, as you know. I mean, she's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And I saw a photo of you the other day with a young lady, and I had to find out. And her name is Emily. So I got to shout out to Emily. Is she from your area? How did you meet her?
Yeah. Her brother started racing this past year, and then me and her just kind of started talking and whatnot, and then kind of led into something more.
So she has an understanding and a background of racing a little bit.
A little bit, not really. Like, her brother just started racing this past year. He started racing at Loudon. So, when I was there and whatnot, he was in a garage with a couple of my friends. So, kind of get to know them a little bit. His family was around all the time and everything.
Well, I've heard she's going to be at Daytona, so I'll make sure I stop by to say hello. But
yeah, she will be.
All right. Hey, so we're going to wrap up here, and I want to mention one thing. So I'm going to kind of go a little weird going into this, but you guys know that I'm weird anyway. So, and
scared.
Yeah. Well, so today is my son's birthday, and I'm not saying that because he's going to hear it, because he has literally no interest in motorcycling and has probably never listened to this podcast at all. But the only reason I mention it is because 28 years ago at the Elliott Hospital in Manchester, New Hampshire, Ben will know where that is. And that's where my son was born. I remember it was a day that there was quite a bit of snow in New Hampshire. Not that we're talking about the weather, but I remember it was a sunny, snowy day. But on that day, of course, and Paul knows this, when you have a child and you're the guy, they offer you the option of cutting the cord. And I wanted no part of that. And we only had one kid, so I didn't have to make the decision ever again. So I never had anything to do with that. I just couldn't even fathom that idea. But cutting the cord is something I actually did probably in the past couple of years, from the point of view of we don't have cable in our house anymore. And I'll tell you, it's been the greatest thing for me, because we have YouTube TV and I have apps now to watch what I want to watch, which is usually NFL, college basketball, and certainly MotoAmerica. And MotoAmerica, I mean, obviously I have a Live Plus subscription and I'm going to continue to have it, even though we're at every race. And, it's still great for us to look at it in the off season or when we come back home or review it. So I'm obviously pitching that this year. It's time to re-up again for Live Plus subscriptions. They've been renewed for people that have had them in the past. And we're pushing for subscriptions this year leading into Daytona. So it's right now $89.99 for introductory price, and it includes Daytona, and it's the only way you can watch the Daytona 200 this year. And even if you're at the track and your track side, if you have it on your phone and you watch the coverage, it's a great way to augment your experience when you're there. But if you can't make it to Daytona, then certainly the Live Plus is where you want to be. It's going to cover all the classes, all the races, the 200. It's going to show Ben Gloddy and his 2 Twins Cup races down there with his team and all the other competitors. It's the way to go for this season. And the programming is fantastic. Michael Hill will be at Daytona this year, and he's part of the Live Plus broadcast, Mike on the mic, running around the paddock. And I think we're also covering the pit stop challenge on Live Plus. I'm sure we are, aren't we, Paul? I would think so.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great opportunity to really be if you're at the track, it's great to augment your experience. If you're not, it's pretty much like being there. It's really awesome. You see everything, most all the practices, not all of them. Some of the morning ones you don't, but you definitely see qualifying sessions and absolutely all the racing, plus a lot of interviews with the riders. So I kind of rambled on about that, but like I said, I cut the cord. You should cut the cord too. Get away from that cable stuff. Start consuming TV and broadcast stuff the way you want to, which is subscribing to apps, including Live Plus. So that's my stance right now. And happy birthday to my son.
Yeah, I think last year I didn't even leave the camper to watch the 200 because you can't really see anything at Daytona. I watched it on the app. So
there you go. There's a testimonial from one of our riders. When you're at the track, it's the way to go, especially, I mean, certainly with road racing, it's great to be there, but it helps, right, Ben? Because even as a rider, you know, there are parts you can't get around to every part of the track, certainly not at Daytona.
Exactly.
So it's hard to see it, but you know, if you follow it on Live Plus, you're right there. It's really fantastic. So anyway, Ben, thank you for being on with us. Continued enjoyment in the off season and success to you. I know you're going to bounce back this year and be a factor. And enjoy that crazy driving that you do everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah, thank you. And just real quick, I just want to thank, Robem Engineering, obviously, for everything they've done. Aprilia and Atlantic Cruising Yachts. We got a bunch more sponsors that are sticking on this year, and I just want to give a huge thank you to all of them for all their support over the years.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Ben, and I'm gonna head up there pretty soon for some meat bingo.
Yeah, meat bingo. We got to have it. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.